and welcome to the Nintendo Switch Online Game Club, the show where we play through the games available on Nintendo's various NSO apps completely at random. I'm your host, Derrick Bittner, and in this episode, I'm joined by the great Clement, YouTube essayist, and one half of the C-Squared podcast duo. How you doing, Clement?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well, and we're also joined by Caro, professional wrestling writer and the other half of the C-Squared podcast. How you doing, Caro?
Pretty all right. I'm glad to
That's
be here.
good. I'm glad to have you here. And as you're both likely aware, there are now over 200 games across the NSO, and while some are widely known like Super Mario Bros. And Zelda, there are some odd picks that could be considered hidden gems. We honestly don't know. So what we'll be doing is entering all those games into a randomizer, picking one, and then giving our initial thoughts. And this week, the Wheel of Games has chosen StarTropics for the NES. What is our experience with StarTropics? What history do you have with this game? Clement, let's start with you.
I'd say I probably have about 4 hours of gameplay with that. I haven't ever beaten it before, but I did briefly play it about, I want to say like a decade ago, because I always knew this was some kind of cult classic. Like when people talk about like underrated NES that everyone should look into at least once, StarTropics always comes up. Mm-hmm. And I liked what I played. You know, I would have finished it if I didn't have all this other stuff going on in my life. But I just never got around to going back to it, even though it's on Nintendo Switch Online and stuff. So, yeah, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm glad this is what got picked.
I feel like we got a pretty good one. Before I give my thoughts, though, Caro, what's your history with StarTropics?
I have never played StarTropics. I've heard of it, but it's just something that I haven't played. But that's a pretty good pick. I've heard people say like good things about it, so I'm excited to kind of see like what it's about, you know.
Yeah. From my own perspective, I've never tried it myself. I've always heard good things like Clement and just was like, I need to try it at some point, but just never really found the time to do it. The three big things I know about the game is, one, it's basically a Zelda-like, except with a more American protagonist, more modern protagonist. The basic concept of how you play is very much in the same vein as Zelda. The second thing I know is that there is a puzzle in this game that cannot be solved without the manual. Like, I believe you literally had to take the manual and put it in water, and it would reveal the answer. It was one of those interactive things. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was old DRM, I guess you could say that, because I know a lot of PC games did similar things where it's like, the only way to get past this puzzle is to solve this cipher within the manual, so you better have that manual or else you're in trouble. As a piece thank you, Cutie Caitlin, who has more experience with this one. It was a piece of paper that came with the game, not the manual itself. So
okay.
Still, same sort of idea. You had to actually bought the game, so good luck on rentals. So whenever we get to that point, we'll have to likely look it up. The third thing I know, and that it's very superficial, I know this is where She Says gets his avatar from, like his sort of variation of himself, like the main character kind of looks like that. So
I'd recognize those freckles anywhere.
Of course. Oh, this is interesting. A little bit more history from Cutie Caitlin. When this released on the Virtual Console for the Wii U, it actually came with a digital manual that you had to dip. So that's a neat way of preserving it. I don't think NSO has anything like that. No. Otherwise, I really don't know much else about the history of this one. This one very much passed me by. It only became sort of this, I don't know, this game that everybody's like, it's such a hidden classic. It's such a lost, really good game. And apparently it never released in Japan. It was only North America and Europe. So
we finally got one over them.
About time.
Finally, we got something to hold off from them. Ha!
Yeah, it's about time. I'm looking through trying to see just some interesting history. Despite not releasing Japan, it was developed by Nintendo R&D 3. So this was Nintendo internally developed. They're the same ones behind like Punch Out, Super Punch Out, Pilot Wings 64. stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And then they're the ones who eventually went on to just make a bunch of like accessories for Nintendo hardware, like the Rumble Pack, Expansion Pack. They're the ones who developed the GameCube and so forth. So they went more into basically their last big game was Pilot Wing 64. Although after that is all hardware. So
You got some fascinating history there.
yeah, got some history. Our director, looking at the history once again, is Genyo Takeda, who doesn't have a lot of games to his credit. He's definitely more of an arcade creator because he was the producer behind Sheriff, the producer of their Popeye game, the producer of Punch Out and Super Punch Out. As far as oh, here you go. He was the producer on Pokemon Puzzle League, Clement.
Oh, hey,
There
right
you
up
Oh,
your
well,
alley.
now I know we're in good
Yeah,
hands.
there you
Now
go.
I know we're in good hands.
Yep, there you go. So not a whole lot of like directing or producing. It's only StarTropics, the only thing he's ever directed. So interesting things there.
And it's beloved.
And it's
Not a
beloved.
bad resume.
A lot of people wanted to see this series come back and I don't know, continue in some way. It seems unlikely, but I don't know. I mean,
Are you worried we're going to hate it?
no, because I've played some trash on here, and I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be trash. I think it might be dated. Like, for example, I got Blaster Master earlier. It's definitely of its time. It's definitely hard, but I still found enjoyment out of Blaster Master. I think the fact that we are able to, because we're on NSO, feel free to use the rewind function however you feel you need to. Yeah. I think that helps lessen it. And you try to get yourself in that maybe old school mindset, or even just like how it still holds up today. I don't know. I have a feeling I'll probably enjoy this one.
I'm excited. Really.
Yeah.
I'm just glad we didn't get something really basic like Nintendo's pinball. So I'm happy we got something substantial. It wasn't like trashy. I mean, maybe it will be. I don't know. But this is a big title. This is a big deal. So I feel like we're on a special episode. I'm happy.
Yeah. I'm excited for this
I
one.
thought we were...
Oh, good, Kara?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought we were going to get something ridiculously hard like Ghosts and Goblins or something like that. So I was like, oh, gosh.
See, I like Ghosts and Goblins. I don't need the rewind function too often for that one. Although I've only played the SNES version, so I don't know what I'm in for the other ones.
I can't get past the second level.
Oh, no. But, yeah, I think unless there's any more thoughts we have on our preconceptions of StarTropics, let's say we take a week and see what we think.
Okay, so I gotta rescue my uncle, but I'm not too sure how to find him, so I go to this island, right? First I gotta talk to the chief, and then I gotta get some clues from a parrot, and then I'm helping these dolphins, and all the time I'm sneaking through graveyards and shooting zombies and blasting monsters. Then my sub cracks up on the rocks, and then the next thing I know I'm cruising inside a whale. Whoa! Oh, new game from Nintendo, man! StarTropics! Every chapter's like another adventure, so it's like a whole slew of games in one. What's the matter with you?
And we're back after a week of playing StarTropics for the NES. I'm actually extremely curious what all of us thought after playing this late era NES game. And let's not waste any time. Let's start with you, Caro. First thoughts. What's your thought? Like, coming straight out of StarTropics, what did you think?
So I thought it was pretty innovative for a 1990 game. So like, I thought there were like a lot of cool ideas in it, and I liked the world that like was in the game. So I think like the creativity and just the humor of that game was great. The controls, no. The controls definitely need work, but it is an NES game, so I'm also kind of like, well, it was sort of the time, so I won't be too harsh on that, but it definitely got frustrating late in the game.
Uh-huh.
So basically, there were things that I liked, things that I didn't like. Overall, pretty good experience.
Okay.
I'd say so.
What about you, Clement?
Yeah, I definitely see why it's a cult classic. I could see why someone growing up with this and playing it every single day would absolutely fall in love, because it's an incredibly charming game. The music's good. The things that you do in it and the things that happen to you are really wacky and out there. There's a fly in my room. I'm sorry. But I do agree. I didn't hear anyone talk about the difficulty before going into this, and I think the difficulty is a lot higher than most Nintendo games. Like, this is going to be a game that's compared a lot to The Legend of Zelda because of how it operates, and I feel the original Zelda is a little easier going than StarTropics, because this game is punishing. It is punishing. If you make a mistake, if you get killed in this game, you are going to suffer for it, and it's like, ugh.
Yes.
I feel like if this game had just like a little rebalancing, it would be an instant classic, no problem. But it is hard to recommend to a casual audience just because of how difficult it can be. But if you're a hardcore gamer or you like old retro games, I would definitely recommend this one.
Yeah.
So
pretty much.
I don't know if I'm going to be controversial with this one or not.
Ooh.
I've had a lot of different games that I've come up on NSO so far. This is my favorite game that I've played on as part of NSO.
I can see that.
I can
definitely see that.
Charmed by this, and obviously the selection I've had up to this point hasn't been too crazy. No, there hasn't been one of those all-time classics. But I am saying that I like this more than Kirby's Dream Land 2. I like this more than I'm blanking on some of the other games I played.
Blaster Master. You like this more than Bamboozle?
Like more than Bamboozle. Blaster Master and whatnot. So another NES game. The thing is, the thing is that I really came back to when it comes to this is I would probably not enjoy this game as much if I was not playing it as part of NSO. This game is saved by the rewind feature.
Yes.
By playing it straight up,
Agreed.
like I've tried, there are too many instant death traps. The controls are too wild, and the enemies get to go in too many crazy patterns where it's like going diagonal. They rush you at times. There are so many reasons why this game, if it didn't have the NSO features, would just not be great. As you said, Clement, it's just too difficult at times. It's just too obscure at times. Like there's just there are problems with it, but when you have the advantage of being able to rewind a mistake or get to the beginning of a stage and not have to worry about these pot shots that you take or the instant death traps that are abundant in this game, you can actually enjoy what it does have to offer. And the writing is really good for an NES game. It's legitimately funny at points. It's very charming in how you do all this, and I see the Zelda comparisons, but I very much feel like it's its own unique beast the further you get in and see what it's going to do. I just came away really enjoying it, but it comes with a massive caveat that only play it on NSO. If you're playing original copy, be prepared for pain.
Again, that's why I'm surprised this is such a big cult classic, because I assumed that like anyone who grew up with this would find this to be incredibly punishing, and yet it does have a huge fan base, and every time I go to a StarTropics video, everyone in the comments section is always gushing about what a great, amazing game it is. So again, it was just kind of surprising, but I imagine it's one of those things that you do get used to after a while, because the controls definitely grow on you the more you play it. Like, I had the hardest time turning corners in this game. Like, just trying to make like a diagonal up, left, like in some of those caves. I would like go left, I'd go up, I'd go left, I'd go up, but I wouldn't actually go anywhere.
You have to give that extra sort of press to get you actually moving, because you turn and then you kind of stop, and then it's like an extra second for you to actually start moving. And you adjust to it, but I think that's the control aspect you were talking about, Caro, where you're not quite...
Yeah, like, it would always just not lock in for me at the best. Like, it would always just grip for me at the worst times, or like, oh, there's a boss and I need to jump to this platform, but I can't, and I get hit, and then I have to rewind. Again, the rewind feature was a blessing in this game, because otherwise I would have had to repeat a whole lot of sections, and that's not fun.
One thing I had to get used to was the fact that like you can jump to other platforms, and you can even jump into the water and kill yourself, and that's happened to me quite a few times. But when you're in a big solid room with no platforms and you're just fighting enemies, you can't jump forward. So like if an enemy shoots fireballs or something, some kind of projectile at you, sometimes, because I've played so many video games in my life and I know that I can jump forward with the platforms, I would anticipate that like, okay, it's just this much distance away. I know if I jump forward, I can get over it. But then I try to jump forward, and instead, Mike Jones, our protagonist, goes, whoop, he just goes straight up. And so I mistimed it, and so the fireballs run into me. And I was like, oh, God, why can't he jump forward when I'm not platforming, when I'm just in the middle of the room fighting an enemy? Like, oh, God. Like, that took a long time to get used to.
Yeah, that's for sure. I kind of just didn't bother jumping a lot of the time. Sometimes it would help. Like, I just barely be able to time it so they go under me or something like that. But most of the time, I was just trying to move and dodge out of the way. I'm curious if you're both also like me, where this game, I think, at least so far, is the best example of why we need manuals as part of the NSO. Because
Yes.
I think it was the grave dungeon where it really started to kick your butt, because there was hidden crap in there that you needed to use these items that weren't going into your inventory, like your weapons. It was just a way to, you picked it up. I'm like, okay, how do I use it? The various different things you got that way, like a candle, a very limited candle that lit up a room on occasion. And it took me forever. I stumbled in the dark just rewinding. I'm like, this can't be how you do this, until I figured out by looking it up, you have to hit start, then you'll be paused. But it turns out you can push down, and there's a second selectable option that you can actually do. That's how you use this stuff. I'm like, what the hell?
That took me a while to get, because I was like, wait, how do I beat this boss, or how do I collected this item. Mm-hmm. How was I supposed to know that I was supposed to go down for it? It's just so weird.
It's like in the first dungeon, you pick up this red jar, which kind of reminds you of like a health potion in Zelda. And then it's basically the same thing. It refills your hearts when you use it. But I picked it up. I noticed it wasn't in the bottom of my inventory, like the actual weapons that you can use in battle, like baseballs and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I leave and I go to the next dungeon. I'm like, what happened to that red bottle I picked up? Because all of the sub-weapons and all the different items that you pick up in one dungeon, if you leave and go to another, they're all gone. You just lose your inventory when you start from scratch. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, but I picked up a red jar. What happened to that? And then you get to the dungeon, as you say, with the graveyard, where you pick up this magic wand. And I'm like, oh, I bet that's powerful. It's not showing up in the bottom. So eventually I knew that, okay, I got to figure out how to use it. I pushed pause. Boop, boop. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. I had to look it up because I was pushing other buttons. Like, there's only 2 buttons. How do I figure this out?
I was the same. I was pushing the shoulder buttons and the minus button. Pretty much any button they could.
Yeah. Something has to happen, you'd think. The other one that got me as far as this, and I was prepared for the whole dip it in water thing, which honestly, the manual should be there for StarTropics just for that, because about these days, I made sure to warn you guys about, so you won't get stuck by that little message.
Yeah.
I just kind of looked it up online.
Yeah. That's all you really need to do. Mm-hmm. And the Wii U version had a way that they had a digital manual and you could simulate doing that. So they kind of kept the experience. So it's a shame they don't have that on NSO. But either way, it also would help me to explain how to use some of the weapons, because I got to the dungeon that involved a lot of snakes around corners where you get the shurikens. And I didn't know how to, I used the shurikens and I thought they would sort of slowly diverge and hit that way. And it didn't happen. So I'm like, I guess I got to bait these guys. It's just another throwing weapon I got. Okay. So I just spent half the dungeon baiting them out and just losing so much health and just dying inside, until I finally got past this one section that really just drove me insane. Got to the next one, and there was just a ton of flies going all around. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to toss out a bunch of these and kill them. And as soon as I hit the B button twice to throw it, it diverged and went horizontal. I'm like, oh, you son of a... I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Nice, I remember easy, effective way.
I remember getting that weapon at first, and I'm throwing it, and I'm like, it's not hitting any of the snakes that I need to hit. And then I accidentally pressed the button twice, and then it split. I was like, oh. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
There's no indication that you have to press B twice for it to split, but okay.
But I would ask you guys, How often did you feel you needed to consult a guide, or did you consult a guide at all with this game? Because I found,
Um,
aside from the piano sequence, because I don't know the keys of piano, I'm not a musician, so like I'm like do re mi fa sol la
Do re
ti,
mi.
which is
And I had
Do
no
re mi
idea if
fa
they
sol
were in
la
a
ti do.
yeah, and I had no idea if they were in a line. I know that little about music, so I don't know if they're all over the place. What I
yeah.
realized later after I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, there's that guy in the village that says all of it in a row. I just didn't put
Yeah.
two and two together that you can just
Oh, does he?
yeah,
Yeah,
he,
he
he
does.
he actually talks about that, but it didn't really come. So it's
Yeah.
in there. You can figure it out,
Well, never mind that.
but it's also one of those things where if you're like us, Clement, and don't have a musical brain, then it's a little bit more tricky to like, is it all in the line? I don't know. Sure.
As long
I
as
am
someone in the
forever-
town actually says it out loud, then I think that's totally fine then.
Yeah. It's just we didn't
I'm
put two and two
forever grateful
together.
for. I'm forever grateful for my musical training.
It would have helped because I had an earlier game as part of the game club, Light Crusader, that had a music-based puzzle that you had to pick up on musical tones, and that was way tougher than this, I'd say. There was no indication. You just gotta kind of go for it. But yeah, you're
But
right.
I would say this game, you don't really need a guide at all, though, because it's like, I wasn't using a guide, I didn't consult one, and the worlds, I like how they break the game off into chapters, so it's not
Yeah.
like this big open world like Zelda. Instead, it's like, chapter 1, you're in Sea Island, you're in Cola, oh, you gotta talk about the names, Coral Cola,
Yes.
and Bell Cola, and How Do You Do Cola?
and
She
There's a
Cola.
village called How Do You
Mir
Do
Cola,
Cola?
Bell Cola.
Yeah, I love I love She
Americola.
Cola, where you cross dress and you're like, oh, you must be
Yeah.
from her cola.
I'm not Mike Jones, I'm Michelle. Yes, Michelle.
And we did get Mike actually talking on a few occasions, not a lot, but it's nice to get that little bit of characterization here and there. Where it's just kind of fun. And obviously skipping ahead a bit, but I like the end credit sequence giving you like scenes that show your adventure just actually in more detail. That's nice for a
Yeah,
little
that was a
reward.
nice touch.
Yeah.
It's very charming, and I agree with you, Clement. My favorite part of this game was absolutely the overworld stuff, where you're just a little squat Mike exploring
Yeah.
around, having to do these puzzles, figuring out the way the world's all set up, and then you get into the dungeons. It's like, shoot.
It's just so cute. I like the one where I think it's the second dungeon, but like you save the dolphin and they're like kikong, kikong, kakong. They make their little dolphin noises, and I thought that was really cute. And then there was the cute sequence where like that one patriotic song plays with the ship, and that goes on for a while.
Oh, and the pirate ship
Yeah.
sinks.
Yeah.
I thought that was cute.
That was fun. The parrot that you had to get the worm, that was
Yeah.
fun. The daughter that was in a coma for a year and you had to get the medicine for her. And that was,
Yeah.
that was probably one of the harder early chapters because there were so many dungeons you had to get through. It was
There's a chapter where like you don't actually go into a dungeon at all, but like you're sailing across the ocean, and then all of a sudden a big giant whale comes and swallows your submarine up.
Yeah.
And now you're going through its intestines, going through the inside of this whale just so you can find a lighter so that you can light a fire and get it to like sneeze you out.
God, I will say
It's
it took
very
me-
imaginative.
Yeah, and it took me a while to figure out like the proper path because at first you think, oh, I'll go by land. It's like, no, you got to figure out the way these places connect with the sub. And again, the traversal, it's almost like early Wind Waker, just more segmented. And
Yeah.
again, I found it charming. But then you go into those dungeons, and things hit so hard. Like there's stuff in the final dungeon doing 3 hearts of damage easily. They run into you. It's brutal.
Oh, more than that. I feel like if you run into them,
yeah.
you lose like 6 or 7. I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Like
I had to rewind so much. Like that
Oh.
last dungeon, I'm like, rewind.
had
I
to
am not losing any of my
restart
heart.
I had to restart
Oh,
just to get a
God.
decent go because I'm like, where do I go for this? And then I just get bum rushed. I'm like, well, there's no point in rewinding because even when I rewind, I'm still going to get taken out because these guys with the laser guns are just kicking your ass.
There's this one part at the very end of the game, like this is just before the final boss, where they want you to destroy this core so that you can open the doorway to the end. And you have to destroy it very, very quickly because it has a self-repair module. Like it's constantly healing itself and fixing itself. But at the same time, the only place that you can hit the core is from this one tiny little spot that is a vent, and it's constantly opening and closing, opening and closing. And I was using the rewind feature at this point because it was just too frustrating to do it the other way. But even with the rewind feature, I fell in that hole, it must have been 15 times.
Oh,
and the
more.
punishment for falling in that hole is that you go down to a lower level, and then the exit takes you all the way back to the start of the level.
Yeah.
So every time you fall in that hole, you have to go down that hallway with the enemies, dodge the turrets, and then you're back in the core room. And it's like, yeah, with rewind, not an issue at all. It's completely fine. But without rewinds, if you're playing this on the NES in 1990, I couldn't imagine how many people fell in that hole multiple times and had to keep doing that hallway over and over and over again. It's like, good Lord.
The sad thing is that's a fail-safe to make sure you can actually beat that boss, because when you fall in that hole, you get into a section that has a lot of enemies, but you can maneuver yourself so you get a full health restore that always respawns and a new laser gun. And that'll get you to the 99 that you need in order to take it down. And it wouldn't be so difficult if it wasn't for the fact that they're constantly spawning an enemy. And that enemy can really mess you up.
Yes.
And I finally got it to the point where I was able to like be so close. But if you lose enough hearts, your yo-yo degrades, so you don't get that sort of range attack anymore. And that would happen a lot of times where it would degrade too much and I couldn't do it. And I had to either rewind or do the whole section again. And you do get a lot better at that section as you go through and get it all figured out. But it is frustrating. It's possible, but it's frustrating. How you get through the beginning of the alien ship where just everything's attacking you at once and you don't have the laser gun right away, I have no idea. I have never seen such a punishing final dungeon in my life.
Dang, that's saying a lot.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's why the rewind function is kind of necessary. Like it's what makes this game fun and allows you to see the clever ideas it has much later on.
Yeah, for sure.
I was trying to think of I'm trying to compare it to other games that are considered hard on the NES. And, I'm a big Mega Man guy. I love that franchise to death. And I always think about how in Mega Man, at least, you have tons of energy tanks that you can keep between levels. Like you can get it in one level, then go to another level and still have that energy tank. Enemies will drop health way more frequently in Mega Man, and that's one thing again, it's just you just need a rebalance for this game, because it's like you don't get enough hearts, and sometimes you get stars, and what the stars do is you have to pick up 5 of them, and they will get you 1 heart.
Yep.
Which when you get to the end of the game and you have 20 hearts or so, the stars are practically meaningless, because I'm not going to be picking up so many that they refill my entire health bar. So it's kind of a useless trinket. It's like, oh, I got a star. Whoop-de-doo.
I will say at that point, it feels like they finally start giving at least a little more hearts by the end, because early on you get nothing, but by the latter half, it's kind of starts happening more. Kind of.
Like even when they give you more hearts, though, it's still brutal.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like, oh great, I have 2 full lines of hearts, but I know I'm gonna screw that up now because this brutal dungeon's gonna throw everything it has at me. So,
or here's 2 hearts or 3 hearts that refill yourself. But watch out for the instant death trap.
Yeah,
there are so many tricks in this game. When you did the volcano dungeon in chapter 3, there's this split pathway in the lava that you go left or you go right. Did you guys both go right when you first did it?
I went right.
Yes.
Okay, because here's what happens when you go left. I chose left when I first played. You go left, you look at the screen, and there's clearly a white tile above. You know that when you go to the next screen, there's going to be a white tile there. You jump, the white tile disappears, you fall in the lava, you die.
I saw that on the other side. I'm like, did I just get lucky?
Oh my gosh.
It's ridiculous. There's some places where you find I remember one dungeon, I found a staircase, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just going to take me to the second floor. Nope, took me to the exit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I had to go all the way back to the beginning again, just to make sure, okay, don't climb that stairway. And then, of course, that's not even talking about the graveyard dungeon, which is the graveyard dungeon has 5 exits, all of which are the wrong one. And so you just have to keep playing and playing and playing until you eventually find the correct pathway.
And then the only way to find that is by using, the magic wand that reveals the ghost that happened to be there that you have to kill in order to open up that path.
Which, like,
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that was, like, for revealing the ghost set first. I picked up the magic wand and I was like, oh, cool. I guess I could do cool magic stuff with it. But no, I didn't realize that I had to, like, press the pause menu and then use it, and then the ghost would appear.
Yep.
Because
So,
like
yeah.
it has an inventory. It's like the wand has like 6 or 7 uses, and you're like, okay, use it. And if you're in a room with no ghosts, you're like, what did that do?
Apparently, it's supposed to
And
reveal
it's
the
like,
hidden mines as well, which I just stepped into and like I'm losing health and I don't know why. Is there a hidden enemy in here? Like I don't know what's going on.
oh, I thought they were just ghosts. I didn't know they were mines. But
I don't know.
because yeah, because that's another thing. You go into a room, you'll just take one step, damage. I'm like, what? What happened? I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I was so confused at first with that too.
And I think that's the push and pull of this game that makes it like
Yes.
I like it, but it also, boy, you need it on NSO. If any other version that doesn't have a rewind functionality or some way to do instant saves, it's going to be a miserable time at some eventual point. It's just too much. But it's a shame too because you got this silly little thing with all the cola namings and as you said, the saving a dolphin or going inside a whale. All the wacky dialogue you get, the fact that it starts out as like, oh, my uncle's been has disappeared. Where's he gone? Oh, it turns out he found aliens. He's been kidnapped by aliens. Well, that's wild. And now
Your
we get a
weapon-
boy.
Oh, of course.
Your weapon is a yo-yo.
Yes, your weapon
That is
a-
so cool.
Also, your uncle is Dr. Jones,
Yes.
which it might make you think
Yeah.
of Indiana Jones. It might make you think of Aqua. I don't know. But the one thing I'll say about this game, though, I can understand why someone would get into it, though, because at least it does have an autosave feature. This is really rare for a
Yeah.
Nintendo game, like an NES game, but it has an autosave feature that tells you not to turn off your power while it's saving, so it feels like it's a PlayStation game or
It
something.
feels so ahead of its time in that way.
And
That's what I mean when, like, it's so innovative in different ways, and that's one of the things. Though I did appreciate that the save feature was like, "Do not turn off your console" with like 3 exclamation marks.
yeah,
It's like, okay, wow, you're
Yeah.
very expressive.
I can
it's always
imagine
auto-saving in between chapters.
I can imagine the feeling of satisfaction when you finally get through a dungeon in the old
Yes.
school version because you got past it, you get that save point, and thankfully it's like it saves at the beginning and it saves at the end. So at least you're like once you're past it, you're done. You don't have to do it again. So there's that relief there that I think you get from accomplishing it, and it's a big deal that you have accomplished it because you have to basically with each new dungeon figure out how the enemies function, where the traps are, what you're doing. You are required to play this again and again. And I wish I didn't do it, but I wish I would have ran out of lives in a dungeon just to see what happens with a game over. Because you have limited lives, but I don't know where it puts you back at. I didn't check that.
I saw that because I was playing the game without the cheat or not a cheat, but the rewind function for a good chunk of the game. I was trying to get into the NES experience to be like, okay, let's pretend it's 1990. I'm playing an NES, not a Switch. But when you lose all your lives, you always go right back to the start of the dungeon. Because, like,
So it's
sometimes when
meaningless.
you die, you have checkpoints.
Oh, right.
So it'll take you, like, maybe
Yeah.
3 or 4 rooms back. And that every time you die to a boss, you always go back, like, 4 or 5 rooms. You never just start right before the boss.
Yeah. And then you always
But
have
when you lose all
3
your
hearts.
lives, you always start with three hearts, and all your sub weapons are gone. So you got to collect those all over again too. But when you lose all your lives, you go to the start of the dungeon, and you have unlimited continues. You can continue for as long as you want. So again, it's like it auto saves for you. Yeah, you can lose all your lives, but you can just keep trying and trying and trying and trying until you eventually brute force it. And I imagine that's what kids in the 90s had to do. And that's why they got so accustomed to how to play it and how to get used to the enemy strategies and stuff. And I think there's some thoughtful, interesting design in there. Like, I love this one dungeon where you go into it and it's completely black and you're just walking forward. And then you see a row of 4 snakes. And you go up and down to, like, judge how far away they are from you, and it's like there's one snake that goes just an extra tile forward, so you know that that's the pathway you have to jump towards, otherwise you're going to land in the water.
Yeah.
And then you go past them and you see an octopus that goes up, middle, right, middle, up, middle, right, back to those 3 squares, so you know that those are where the platforms are going to go. So, like, it does seem tricky at first, But if you're just paying attention, there are things about the design that's, thoughtful and kind of clever, and it makes you go, oh, okay, I get what they're doing here.
You see, I kind of just used modern solutions and I just used the rewind feature and I went back. I was like, okay, what did this room look like? Okay, that's the screenshot. Gotcha. Then he went back to the present.
Clever. Yeah, it's so odd because they'll have those indications like, if you pay attention, this is how you do it. But then they'll have the traps, like you can't, like the lava thing that you had, Clement. There's no indication. In fact, it actively tricks you with that, and yet, there's a weird imbalance there that definitely causes it to, if you're playing it on the more classic hardware, not enjoy it as much. It's a problem for sure.
I'm also remembering this one dungeon where you go into a screen and then you immediately land on a platform where it's one of those platforms that you have to jump off of immediately, otherwise it sinks into the water. So it's like, I go to the next screen, I'm stopping to analyze the situation, but then he's dead. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It's so kind of you to just do that to me.
This is a very trial and error game. You're going to be redoing things over and over and over again.
And good on the game though, with when you actually do finish a dungeon, it's like, congratulations. Like, it really pumps you up. Like, you did it. Good job. Even at the end of the game, it's like, holy hell, you actually beat this. Congratulations. That's amazing. You beat this adventure.
At least there's that.
They recognize
at least
that they
you
made
feel rewarded.
Bit of a BS game as far as that's all concerned. Oh man, it's kind of amazing to me this never released in Japan. Only the North America and Europe. I don't know how Japan would feel about it. I guess it's hard to say. I guess in some ways it does feel very American, but it also feels very, I don't know, maybe Hawaiian or Filipino culture, just because everybody's like an islander, but it doesn't feel, I guess the nice thing is it doesn't feel like they're stereotypes, I guess is the best way to put it. Did you guys feel that?
No.
I'm never really that good about that anyway, so I wouldn't know if anything here is offensive, but I didn't see any weird, weird caricatures, no big lips or anything. I didn't see any weird, bizarre drawings.
You didn't have the, pardon me for this, but the Ooga Booga type thing. Or,
no.
The witch doctor song type thing.
It's like, I know people who find the character of Papu Papu in the Crash Bandicoot games to be a little culturally insensitive. So, I don't know. I didn't see anything like that in StarTropics. I felt like every character was designed pretty well.
No.
I mean, at one point you go to a place that's filled with Amazon women where only women are allowed. So I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like that's a very common trope in RPGs.
Yeah.
The bosses generally weren't too bad. It actually had some cleverness to them, but dear God, Zoda. God, I just figure out his pathways and you get actual hits, and just his hitbox was rough.
Yeah.
Like, his
you had
first
to
form
hit him
wasn't
at the
bad, but
bottom.
that final bit.
I think I got lucky with that one because I really just I got close to him and I waited to see if he jumped to the left or jumped to the right, and every time he did, I would attack and then immediately go to a square he wasn't close to. And I just kept doing that over and over again, and I seemed to get lucky and beat him. So, I don't know.
Maybe you just had to find that pattern. It just didn't really come to me, unfortunately.
The boss I died on way too many times was the fire boss in Chapter 3. Because, because there's this weird gimmick where, you have to flip these two switches to destroy it. And I found the first one no problem. Okay, it's on the left side of the room. But I'm looking everywhere for the second one, and it never occurred to me that you can jump to the platforms it's basically on, because its sprites are so close to the platforms that you can jump to that I figured, well, I can't jump there, I'll take contact damage. But no, you can jump there, and that's where the switch is, and I was like, okay. So I died 7-8 times just trying to figure that out.
Funny thing for me is I was the complete opposite. Still died a ton, but I found the one in the middle first. I was going to the right first. I was like, I just didn't make it to the left. I'm like, oh God. Because I opened up the first one and just try to go across from it, but it throws out those fireballs so often. I'm sorry for interrupting, Caro. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I also got lucky there. So I pressed the switch. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what happens if I go on the platform. Surely there can't be. Oh, there's a switch there. okay, I press the other switch. Maybe I can hit the oh, it's dead. Cool. That was my experience.
Man, you just kicked his ass.
I didn't
There
have
you
to do
go.
anything else.
Well, that's nice. But yeah, I'm curious what we all think. I think for now we've said I believe we've said all we've wanted to say about StarTropics, but we're going to wrap things up with our final verdict. Would you recommend StarTropics as an NSO or tell people to stay away with an NO? Clement, let's start with you.
Going by the logic that we are talking about the Nintendo Switch Online version and not just as it is, then yes, absolutely. NSO, I would definitely recommend StarTropics because this is a game I beat in about like 4 or 5 hours with the rewind feature, so it's not that long of an experience. I didn't need a guide in order to figure out what to do, aside from like the letter segment, which I understand that's how it was designed, that's how they packaged the game, but when you're ignoring just the letter segment, the overworld is so small that you can usually just brute force your way through anything. Like, okay, I'm going to try running into every mountain. Oh, look, a hidden pathway. Now I can get to the bottle. That was easy. The controls are going to take some getting used to. Obviously it's very, very difficult, but it doesn't feel like it's very cheap sometimes, but it never feels like unbearably impossible, I guess. It never feels just like I don't even want to play this anymore. No, I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep seeing what would happen next because I wanted to see the next fun set piece. And it's charming. It's got cute music. It's definitely, worth checking out. And I can understand why it has a cult following. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. It's probably not going to be in my top 10, top 20 favorite NES games ever of all time, but I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I finished it. So yeah, I'd give it a recommendation.
Cool. What about you, Caro?
I'm gonna give it an NSO.
I'm actually
Obviously,
surprised.
it's well, I do like it. I do like. I think the creativity and the imagination of the world definitely wins me over because I do think it's very imaginative for its time and for a lot of the ideas that it has is great. So if you're looking for like that experience, definitely recommend it absolutely on NSO with Rewind. That is probably what saved me here. Obviously, like Clement said, and I'm sure all of us had said at some point, the controls are kind of finicky. It got a little bit more frustrating for me, but honestly, it didn't like ruin the entire experience. So I think it's best to come into this game with the mindset that you're going to have to experiment. You might die a few times, but the rewind feature is there. So as long as you're okay with just that experimentation and, be willing to try new things, then I think you'll like StarTropics. So yes, I recommend.
Cool. And I think I'll make that 3 for 3 with an NSO. I mean, I said it right at the beginning. It's my favorite game that I've played as part of Game Club so far. But it is a heavy caveat with the NSO features, especially the rewind, because I think the game you can probably get to a certain point without too much issue as far as figuring out. Because yes, you'll die. Yes, you'll get the trap, but you just figure out, okay, don't fall for that trap again. Here's how this enemy works. Let's make this happen. You get good. You're a kid. You're a kid in the 90s. You don't have a lot of other stuff to do. You probably only get one game or so at a time. So you're going to focus on this game. So you get good at that game. It's, as Clement said, it's probably why this became a cult classic, because you really just stick with it. And that's a bit harder to swallow in the modern context where you just like, what the hell? Why was I tricked by that? But I think the NSO helps negate that with the rewind function. So if you want to go for the classic experience, you can. But if you don't want to deal with it and you just want to see the next cool thing this game has to offer, you can use that rewind and really make it something fun. And those in-between segments between the dungeons are so delightful. I was always just a smile on my face and like, I really like this. I'm having so much fun. And that's a nice feeling to have while playing some of these NSO games. So yeah, there's heavy caveats to this one. It's not one of those instant classic, no matter how you play it. It's fantastic. But if you massage it a bit, use those little cheats that are built into the service, it's a good time. So yeah.
Yes.
And what about all of you? Have you played StarTropics before, or was this your first time? But before we go, where can everyone find you at? Caro, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Caro Taro. My Twitter is locked as in now, but I might open it up again, so
Okay.
just keep that in mind.
Fair enough.
But
And Clement, where can we find you at?
Just here on YouTube, I am Clement J64. I do a whole bunch of video essays. I've talked about things like Final Fantasy. And most popular stuff is fighting game lore. I can tell you exactly the story of Tekken or Street Fighter, and I can talk about, I don't know, the most depressing endings in gaming, bad endings. That's going to be coming out in like the next weekend. So I got a whole variety of stuff you can watch, and yeah. I know I'm not on camera usually with those videos, but hopefully that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's all good. And hey, you're both a part of a podcast that goes up on your channel as well, C Squared. So definitely check that out. I will plug that personally. Gotta watch that. Thank you both so much for joining me. And hey, if all you lovely viewers enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments, and please consider supporting us at patreon.com/gvgaming, which includes our live audience here that will allow you to watch Game Club live as it's being recorded. But even just subscribing and hitting that bell helps us a ton. But now it's time for the Wheel of Games to choose next week's title, as I'm joined by my special guests, the Golden Bolt and Mykonos fan. Are you both ready to see what game we're playing?
Give it to me.
I've never been more ready for anything.
Ooh, I like the enthusiasm. So let's decide our fate. Bring up the Wheel of Games and spin that wheel. The wheel spins, and we are going to get... Oh, how appropriate. F-Zero X for the Nintendo 64.
Good timing. Wow.
That's a game I've heard of.
Yeah, I'm aware of this game. Who knew? So yeah, F-Zero X, that should be a really fun one to see. But yeah, there you have it. We'll see you next time as we cover F-Zero X for the Nintendo 64. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.